Good afternoon, thanks for joining us on this event for today, your former self. Today we've got two guests with us, both from rolling stock, and the focus of this one as well for myself is the fact that we've got two people that are linked with the armed forces as well. So I'm hoping that within the careers advice that they give, they'll be looking at how the armed forces has helped them out. Any of you that are fairly new to the YRP, we've got youngrailpro.com, which is our latest website. That's a new website that's up and running. There's lots of information on there. All the previous events that we've run, certainly through COVID, any of their details and videos that we've done through this webinar system are on there for you all to view and look back over at your leisure. There's some really good ones. The previous one that we did with Nina Lockwood and Anna Jane Hunter last week was very good, with some good advice on there that they'd give their younger selves if they were able to. There's also information about how to get involved with the YRP, links to local regions. Myself, I'm the Northwest Chair for YRP, so anybody within the Manchester Northwest region, please get in touch if you're interested in getting involved with the committee. Okay, so today I've got Basi and I've got Gavin. Both of them, I worked with Raj in the Royal Navy many years ago, and Gavin's got Army Reserve experience. Okay, as you can see there, the pictures. I'm going to introduce Raj first. He's going to deliver a bit about his career progression over the years and how he's got into the position of National Maintenance Manager for DB Cargo UK. And then we'll pass over to Gavin as well, and he can discuss how he's got to the Head of Fleet Production role for West Midlands Trains and any experiences that he's picked up on the way. Okay, Raj, if you'd like to introduce yourself, please.
Cheers, Ben. First of all, good evening, everyone. And Ben, can you hear and see me okay?
Yes, I can, yeah.
Okay, good stuff. So I'm currently on the Wi-Fi, so if anything starts to slow down, please just let me know and I'll stop and then we'll catch up. So Ben, thanks for inviting me to this event today, and hopefully what we go through today may help some of you that are observing. So like Ben said, he's asked me to go through my career to date and then answer some questions after. So I originally came from a military background. I joined the Royal Navy in 2003 as an aircraft engineering technician. I left the Royal Navy in 2008, which at the time was at the height of the financial crisis. I kind of fell into rail, if you like. So I joined a company at the time called EWS, which was English, Welsh and Scottish Rail. I joined as a locomotive technician at a place called Toton TMD, which is one of the largest rail freight maintenance depots in the UK, and ideally 16 minutes away from my house. So that was ideal for me after leaving the military. From that role, I stayed in that role for around 18 to 24 months, and I moved straight into a supervising role, which is the maintenance team coordinating position. I kind of moved into there because I started taking a big interest in business improvement, continuous improvement, and that's basically where one of the first kind of qualifications that I did through our organisation, which was a very basic qualification in MVQ level 2 in business improvement techniques, but it set me on my journey to leadership, management, and also challenging the way things are done and how we can improve things by utilising business improvement tools. From there, I moved on to become a production manager. I was deputising in that position in 2011, and I was made permanent in 2012. I was the youngest production manager at the time within Toton TMD. From there, I introduced another business improvement initiative, which was basically looking at the flow of the depot. So the flow of the depot being, how do we organise the tasks that we're currently doing? How do we make sure that the throughput of those tasks are done in the right order, so that when you come to making the decision process, you've got a good heads up of what's coming, what needs to be planned, what material needs to be ordered. That took a massive chunk out of the downtime of the locomotives. So we reduced the downtime of the locomotives to 48% in that time, which was a huge chunk. And that's basically just by organising the work. So that was a great learning curve and experience. From that role, I moved into the major projects role. I actually only did that role for 4 weeks, because that's when I had a phone call from my boss at the time saying that I've been asked if I can go and assist our French colleagues in Euro cargo rail. I was thinking, okay, so you want me to go and assist for 4 weeks, but it was a kind of, we needed to go over there for 2 years and help them out. I've always gone with my gut instinct. My gut instinct was to go. I just asked for a day to kind of think about it, if you like, but it was never really thinking about it. It was about organising my life that I had at that moment in time. I just bought a house, etc., etc. I just needed to push a few things through. Going out to France, a fantastic learning experience for me. I couldn't speak French, although I did actually study French at school. I could still hear the voice of my French tutor from secondary school when I kind of objected to the reasons of learning French. And my school tutor said to me, you never know what you might do in life. And, you know, I could hear those words ringing in my ear as I landed in the airport with my suitcase ready to stay out there for 2 years. So I spent 2 years out there. Fantastic learning opportunity, not only from a work perspective, from a personal and cultural perspective as well. What we did out there, we did some great work. I'm not going to bore you with all the details. If you want further details, you know, I'm happy to talk about that after or during the questions. That's fine. But the long shot is we reduced their maintenance cost by over £1 million year on year by making sure that we increased the efficiency of how they were utilising their maintenance. So there was a lot of things taking place where they were taking the asset out to do some overhauls or to do maintenance, whereas my practice has always been, and I know many people's practices as well, is don't look to take the asset out, look to work on what you're trying to overhaul or what you're trying to maintain, and only take the asset out as a last resort. So for example, bogies on a locomotive, they were taking the loco out to overhaul the bogies, but really let's look at getting a float set of bogies and let's looking at working on them so that the locomotive is still out working, etc., etc. Loads of stuff like that. Anyway, it's really good. And when I came back in 2015, I got shortlisted for the Young Manager of the Year for the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transports, and I didn't win it. I came second, but I came second to a worthy person. So that was another good learning curve. I arrived back in the UK in 2015, where I was asked to look at the reliability of the locomotives that we had within DB. I stayed in that role for 8 months. I improved locomotive reliability by over 7,000 miles per technical incident. Again, which was a huge improvement in the time. Various things, introducing the reliability improvement group, looking at the failure modes effects and criticality analysis, analysing your Pareto analysis as well, a wide variety of things through that. The reason I only stayed in that role for 8 months is because a blueprint role came up within our organisation called the Locomotive Outstations Manager, and I really fancied spreading my wings and learning more about the rail organisation and also about our company, because the Outstations Manager looked after all of the maintenance in the outstations outside of the depot. So a great opportunity. I was fortunate enough to get the role. We did some great things in there as well. We reduced T status, which is transfer status of locomotives, by over 80%. That's because I came from a mindset of working in France and working in the major depots and looking at what we can do at source. I'm big on what we can do on source, what we can do in white space, how we can minimize the impact on the organization, how we can be as efficient as possible. And I'm relentless in that pursuit of what we do. And that's kind of where the military mindset comes in, because you just keep asking why can't we do this, why can't we do that? You know, when you're in the military, you have to make the best of what you've got, and you have to do things at source. You don't have the luxury of always moving things around, providing you don't compromise safety, of course. So from the outstations manager role, I then went into Toten depot manager in 2017. So the depot has been here for 55 years. The depot, the sidings, has been here for longer. Again, the youngest ever depot manager at Toten. It was a great privilege to be another depot manager there. It's steeped in history, and it's a great facility with some great people that work there as well. What we did in there, again, great performance with the efficiencies of the locomotives. But one of the key things that we did whilst I was there was we started to look to grow the third party business of our organisation, which we have done quite significantly, to be honest. Toten has been doing a lot more third party work, but also it's diversified its portfolio. So it isn't just how it was previously with one customer, it's with several customers. And it was about us getting out there and making sure people are aware. Little things as well with Toten. We took some apprentices on for the first time in years. It's good to see people coming through the rail, but also getting that foundation and that grounding. I took my mantra of what I was doing in the outstations about making sure you develop your employees. Development, coaching and mentoring is key. You are only as good as your team, and it doesn't matter how good you think you are. If your team has a weakness and you're not willing to help people develop that weakness, then that's a weakness within your armory. So from there brings me to my current role, which is the National Maintenance Manager for DB Cargo UK. I was deputising in this post for a few months before officially going to interview and being appointed in this position. What this role basically includes is all the major depots within DB Cargo UK feed into my role, and all the outstations feed into my role as well. And that's all of the locomotive and all of the wagon maintenance within DB Cargo UK. So we've got thousands of wagons. We operate around 250 locomotives. Some key highlights already. We've got record-breaking wagon availability. We've got record-breaking short sets as well. So a short set is making sure that your train doesn't run short when you're in freight. Every wagon is revenue. So you know, a real good start to what hopefully will be a long and successful journey. So that's a snapshot of my career so far. Ben sent me some questions to go through as well. So one of the original questions was how have you got into your positions and your roles. So just something really simple is the willingness to learn and the willingness to challenge. So when I say challenge, there is an education to challenging. When you're, I would say, younger, because when I was younger, my challenging was a lot more abrupt, a lot more direct, and there is no right or wrong way, but you've got to also understand how that can be interpreted by people who are coming to work trying to do the best. Just because there may be another way to doing something doesn't mean that they're not looking at it. They've just not seen it yet. So you need to understand what's happening so you can challenge, but you need to take people on a journey when you're challenging as well, because naturally as humans, when challenges come, people can become defensive. It's about breaking down those barriers. If you're going to challenge someone, or if they may have an idea, your consultants are always the people that do the job. They are the best people to ask for improvements or to help guide people through improvements. And by getting the buy-in of those individuals, that is a sure way of delivering success to any team or any organisation. So the second question from Ben was, what helped your success? So personally, what helped me was my determination to constantly operate outside of my comfort zone. So there's a saying that nothing great ever grows in a comfort zone. If you're in your comfort zone, you're what I would say treading water. And if that's what you want to do, that's fine. There's no issues with treading water. It's your career. It's your choice. No problem at all. But for me personally, being outside your comfort zone, that's where you'll learn the most. That's where you'll experience the most, and that's where, for me, the most reward comes. So, biggest success. The biggest success for me personally, and it may be viewed as a small success, but it was a success that I thoroughly enjoyed at the time. So just before being asked to go and be stationed in France for 2 years, there was a political situation ongoing, and obviously this session's being recorded, so I can't go into too much detail, but basically I was asked to go and make sure that I took some colleagues with me to mitigate any potential strike action, and if there was a strike, we would be able to keep the business running. So one of my highlights, again, just being appointed as a production manager, and the person who had his hand up first saying, I'm happy to go out there and lead, not knowing anything about that business at that time, was the fact that we stationed people at key strategic locations within France where locomotive maintenance was taking place, and we averted the strikes as well. And I got a personal thank you from the CEO at the time, which was good. And it's something that I've always looked back on with fond memories, that shows that with the right team, the right attitude, and with the right motivation of what you can achieve, nothing is insurmountable, if you like. Biggest failure, again, it's a small one, but it's one that always sticks in my mind. So when I was a maintenance team coordinator just starting, I was asked to move a loco. So a routine thing for a maintenance team coordinator, a supervisor. I went out to move, well, I didn't go out to move the loco, actually. I was asked by another coordinator to move the loco, because the loco started emitting fumes in the shed, which obviously we have an extraction system, but because the locomotive hadn't been started for a while, this was back in 2010, they asked me to move quickly, and they said, you know, he was the senior MTC, if you like, and he said, I've checked around, you know, everything's clear, I just needed to move out. Anyway, we just bought this new oil and fuel filtration system. It was about 40 grand a piece. There was 2 of them. So I run down, keen, get the locomotive moved out. The staging, it starts to pull some of the staging, which you can't see because of the smoke in it. It takes one of the filtration systems and puts it in the pit. So, you know, just being completely transparent and open. People do make mistakes, but the main thing is learning from those mistakes. And what I learned from there was, you know, not to rush things, bearing in mind that I was 24 at the time, so not to rush things, and also always to check, because as soon as you take ownership of something, it's you that's going to feel the force when things go wrong as well. So learning curve for me. Luckily, I managed to stay in that position, and luckily the depot manager at the time understood that it was a genuine mistake. No one was hurt, and the reasons how that mistake happened. Favorite part of my career. So a favorite moment of my career was, and again, because the session's being recorded, I can't go into too much detail on it because of the confidentiality, but we were given a project that had to be achieved within 3 months, but that project would take a minimum of 6 months. and the difference between achieving and not achieving this was £3 million for the organisation within that year. Originally looking at it, it looked insurmountable because of the way we've always done things. So the first thing I did was look at the critical path of what the project was, where the blockages were, and how we could alleviate those blockages. Some of the biggest blockages was there was a specialist welder that was required from America, and you won't believe it in this day and age that we had to get a welder from America to come and do a specific job, which was one part, one piece. You know, that job really would take 2% of the time, but we had to send the locomotives to another location who had access to this special welder, blah, blah, blah. So the obvious thing is we need to get that welder into our depot. We need to make sure that welder does the job here and the asset doesn't have to go somewhere else. So from being given the challenge of having that done within 3 months to then knowing that it couldn't be done before 6 months with the way we were doing things, we got that completed within 9 weeks, and that's £3 million straight into the company, which we wouldn't have got. So that's definitely a moment of success that I look back on, which was good, and also the favourite part of my career. So anything I wish I'd done more of. So there's two things from a professional point of view. I guess networking. When I was younger, I never really saw the point, being completely honest, of networking. I was so focused on achieving success for the company I was working for. But with networking, you do get to learn more. You do get to expand your horizons. You do get to look at things differently, and you do get to meet like-minded people who you can speak to about finding a solution for things from a collaborative approach. So networking is definitely one of the things. And then from a personal perspective, I would say, believe it or not, taking photos. I've been in the railway now for 12 years, and photos really, I've not got a great deal. So that journey's been so steep, it would have been good to have some original photos. So most important piece of advice that I've learnt. So in a previous life, I used to box competitively. I used to box for the Navy as well, and there's something that's always stuck in my head from that, and that is hard work beats talent if talent doesn't work hard. Now, for everyone viewing this, it doesn't matter how talented you are. If you're not willing to work, you're not going to reach the full potential of your talent. You have to be absolutely relentless in your pursuit for success. And there is, regardless of what anyone tells you, there is no substitute for hard work. That doesn't mean burn yourself out. That just means give yourself a fair amount of time to achieve what you want to achieve, and know that it is going to be early mornings and late nights if that's really what you want to do. And if it isn't, that's fine. But from a professional point of view, if you want to achieve your full potential, then hard work is absolutely key to make sure you do that. So the other question from Ben was, what have I done outside of work to help with my progression? So there's a book out there called Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So the first thing is, if you've not read that, read it. The 7th habit is sharpening the saw. So sharpening the saw is basically just make sure that you continue to learn. So I myself, outside of work, have been in a constant state of learning for the past 11, 12 years. The latest one being is I'm studying a Master's in Business Administration, and I'm also studying my CMI diploma level 7 in leadership and strategy, because they kind of go hand in hand. Learning both academically and in practice is key to your development. It's key to make sure you move forward. It's key to make sure you keep your mind fresh. There is such a thing as cognitive bias, which means that when you've been in an organization for so long, or when you've done things for so long, you start to become biased towards that way of doing things. You need to always have something that's going to help you look at things differently and continue to develop things going forward from a different perspective. So be plenty of people out there who will tell you that you're mad for doing stuff, or you're mad for doing another course because of the job you're doing, because of the life you lead, or whatever. And I would say, don't let people judge you by their standards. If you really want to do something, you will do it. If you listen to that voice in your head and that excuse that tells you why you can't do it, you'll also fail as well. So if you really want something, you'll 100% succeed with that. So learning is absolutely key to do outside, not only in work but outside of work as well, to get there. And the final question from Ben was, what advice would you give your younger self? So as a broad statement, when I was younger, my diplomacy was poor. I was very direct. Some people would probably say I'm still quite direct now, but I think learning that getting on with people is quite important, because what you don't want when you start to go up the ladder is you don't want people butting heads if it's bad for the organisation. You need people to find that win-win within the organisation. So as a younger Raj, I would have said to myself, you need to be more diplomatic. You need to take people's feelings into consideration. Definitely key. So I made a few notes of some other advice that I would offer as well, just as some key points, so we can develop these further if we wish. So the first one being, you must find your own recipe for success, which allows you to achieve results. Now, the way I do things will be different to how other people do things. And through my career, what I've done is I've looked at all my managers that I've worked with, all the people that I've worked with in an organisation, and I've looked at their good points and their bad points, and I've tried to combine the good points of what they do well, and also remember the bad points and how that made me feel at that moment in time, and how that may disengage people. The second one is, you need to be proactive and seek out change. Don't wait to be tasked with it. So anyone in an organisation, it is your job to improve that organisation wherever you sit. Don't wait to be tasked with finding something. Be proactive in your pursuit of that. The next one is, you need to understand that you're not going to always be right, which is something I struggled with in my younger years. You're also going to make mistakes. So embrace this opportunity as a learning curve, both for not being right and also making mistakes. Mistakes are key to growth. Challenging people when you believe you're right is also the right thing to do, because they will persuade you why you're not right, and you may have a different opinion and a different perspective. So that is something. The next one is being positive. Being positive is absolutely key to how you will tackle tasks going forward. So if you have a positive outlook, there are various studies that demonstrate that people who have a positive outlook perceive blockages less than people who don't. So for example, if you're positive, you can go up and someone could see a brick wall, but you might see a paper wall and tear it down. Always remain positive at all times. You will have bad days, but being positive is really important, because if you're not positive, that can be infectious within the team, and also it can hamper your performance as an individual. The next one, for anyone who are in leadership roles now or go into leadership roles, you are only as good as your team. So as I said previously, develop your team, coach your team, counsel your team, mentor your team, understand their weaknesses, build their weaknesses, understand their strengths, etc., etc. The next one after that, which kind of goes hand in hand with what I was saying earlier, learn to build relationships. Someone gave me a key piece of advice when I became the locomotive outstations manager, and that is, make sure you pick your allies in an organisation, because there will be people there within an organisation that don't understand what you're trying to do for the better of any company, and it's important that you've got allies there as well, so that you can get some good information and also a good steer when you're going in the wrong direction. I think another thing to add, which is more of an advice, when you go into interviews, guys, you will be asked about competencies, but you'll also be asked about milestones. And I never really used to know all the key successes that I've had in my career. And I would say anyone who's going to go to an interview, make sure that you've kind of noted your key successes, your key failures, your key learning curves. Make a diary of them, because you never know when you will be asked. last but not least, before I hand back over to you, Ben, so I've set goals, I've set directions, and I've been completely focused in how I'm going to get there and how I'm going to achieve that. You know, my goals to go as high as my capabilities can take me. But again, to coin another phrase, it's be stubborn about your goals, but be flexible about your methods. So just because you can't achieve something with the way you're trying to achieve it now, doesn't mean you have to change it if it's something you really want. All you need to change is your approach and be flexible about how you do that. So that's me wrapped up, Ben. If I hand back over to you, and I look forward to fielding any questions later. Thanks, guys.
Thanks very much, mate. That was brilliant. As you can see, I've taken notes of everything that you've said there. Very good. And I hope that everybody listening's got a good bit of advice and inspiration from that. Okay, mate. So we'll do the questions and answers at the end of this. If you've got any more, we've had a few in already. So if you've got any more, just keep pinging them through, and I'll field them to both Raj and Gavin after this. So Gavin, over to you, please. If you can go through your advice as well. Thanks very much.
Can you hear me right? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, mate, and we can see you. Thank you.
Yeah, so thanks for inviting me. Talking to an audience on stage, or a virtual stage in this case, isn't my strong point. So this is some good development for me, actually. What I'm going to do, I'm going to bring up to speed with my career to date. I like some key points that I feel have made me a better leader, but also look to see where I could have improved along the way. And I think one noticeable improvement is my LinkedIn picture is terrible, especially when it's posted next to Raj's. So I'm going to get that updated. So just an overview, I'm 38, as you can probably tell by the accent, I'm from South Wales originally, and I'm now living in the Midlands. So my career, I left school in 1998 with some GCSEs, and I always knew I wanted to go into a trade, so I went into an apprenticeship with the local council as a dual-skilled technician, working on a Welsh water contract, actually, so with sewage pumping stations. So these would range from anything from a small hole in the ground with a flight submersible to massive places buried deep beneath the ground with Archimedes screws that you wouldn't even know existed if you didn't know they were there. It wasn't a great apprenticeship, if I'm honest, in terms of learning, but what it did offer me was a really great life experience. I'll never forget some of the people I worked with on the council there. But I was fortunate enough in 2000 that Great Western were taking on apprentices, in particular in Lando Depot in Swansea, for the first time in many years. A couple of reasons I was quite fortunate for that was a lot of family history on the railway. So my dad worked there as a team leader at the time. My uncle worked there. My grandfather worked for BR. So I always knew sort of I would try and get into the rail industry at some point in my career. So role models, one person stands out particularly from my apprenticeship at Great Western, and that's John Fripp, because he pretty much nurtured us through. Because I did 2 years previously, I did 3 years with Great Western, and came out my time in 2003. So just in terms of Lando was a very old way of working depot. It did modernise over my time there. There was a lack of diversity in the staff, and it was a job for people from South Wales, and pretty much dead man's shoes. So when you started in Lando, you were there until you finished. Not many people progressed, and not many people moved on. So I passed out in 2003. Because I came out my time early, there was no vacancy at Lando. I got offered a job in St Philip's Marsh in Bristol. As a 21-year-old South Walian, I wasn't impressed. Up sticks, and my new future role was in a different country. So I moved to Bristol. I took a role, of course I took the role. And I went from being this probably stroppy, sort of younger person of myself to engage in it. And it was one of the best moves I've ever made. So you soon find out when you work in a different place, when you pass your apprenticeship on August the 31st, 1st of September, you're not the apprentice anymore. When you go to work, you were taking that technician salary and you were doing a technician's role. So I grew up pretty quick there, actually. I could have gone back to Lando after about 3 months, but I stuck it out for about 18 months in total. After that, the travelling got a bit too much. So a role came up in Lando in 2005. I went back to Lando. But saying that, I did enjoy my time at Simplest Marsh and still got a lot of friends there. So a lot of pride in every depot I've worked in, and I've worked in a few. So you'll all get all your depots will sort of have that pride amongst them, want to challenge, feel they're the best at doing things, and FDM was the same, and Lando certainly was like that. So a couple of key points when I went back to Lando in 2005. We worked on Class 43 power cars mainly at Lando. The 47s had gone by then. So we were looking after heavy maintenance. So within level 1 to 4, so C exams, D exams, we were specialists in them. But also we looked after GC traction motors and improved the reliability of them. So much so that we won a National Rail Award in the UK and were nominated through to a European Rail Award. We didn't fare so well there, but I think when you sort of look at the competition in terms of what people were doing for the European Rail Award, I think it was just so much of an achievement to actually get there. So yeah, going back to Lando, I said that my dad was a team leader. So I always sort of aspired to be a team leader. And I think probably up until a few years ago, obviously, I would have said my career probably stayed at Lando, and I'd probably finish off as possibly a team leader, maybe production manager if I were lucky. But things change. So I did progress to a team leader level, so opposite shifts to my dad. That was great, got a bit comfortable, and just fancied another challenge. So in 2007, I actually joined the TA, as it was called then, Army Reserve now. And I remained in there till 2018. So I wanted to do something that was totally different to the railway. It's quite a funny story of how I ended up in the regiment I ended up in. So I knew I wanted to be in logistics. I don't know why, but I just knew I wanted to be in logistics. And we went to an open day, and I was actually sold by the Port and Maritime Regiment, mainly because they drank the most, if I'm honest, during the night. So that was me sold, and then that was me signed up to go to Southampton and do my training. So we did our training, and I mobilised pretty much as I finished my training. So I got a bit stagnant in Lando. There wasn't any real progression, so I thought, yeah, let's mobilise for a year. So I took some time out from Great Western whilst they maintained my role. I made to come back into and mobilise and go away with the TA for a year. And what a life experience that was. So I ended up going to Kuwait a few times, bringing a lot of kit back from the end of the Iraq War, the Second Iraq War. And just doing lots and lots of stuff that you'd never ever do in normal life, or city street as it's called in PA. So obviously back to Lando, keep my head down, wanted to progress, and an opportunity came up back in 2012 for myself to do a bit more schooling. So myself and a young boy called Ryan Williams at the time, who I knew very, very well, and who was now engineering director at Transport for Wales. We both put ourselves forward to do a foundation degree in mechanical engineering. So a lot of thanks there to Great Western for allowing me to go on it, and actually the Welsh Government for funding it. So 2 years there, 2012 to 2014, studying, and it was bloody hard, if I'm honest. So fitting it in between night shifts, swapping off day shifts. So yeah, the company was supportive, but it took a lot of effort from ourselves as well. And we both passed through them courses. And then I think I had a learning bug. So actually back in 2014 then, I actually had an IRO diploma in railway operational management, which opened my eyes to the railway in general, actually, because I'm a fleet boy through and through in traction and rolling stock. I'm in depots, and I've worked in 2 depots at that time. But it did open my eyes to how the railway operates. And again, a lot of thanks to Great Western for giving me that opportunity. So wanted to progress. I went through a few roles, and I was fortunate enough back in 2015 then to be offered 2 roles. So one of them was a role up in Northern as a production delivery manager, which is sort of a deputy to the depot manager, and one of them was a production manager in the Reading depot for First Great Western. And it chose Northern, and I'll explain sort of why I chose Northern in a bit. So 2015, big move for me and the wife. So we'd literally in 2015 just got married. We went abroad to get married. We came back, we did the honeymoon and everything abroad, came back and had a party in the UK on the Saturday, and on the Sunday night I drove up to Manchester for my new career, leaving my wife behind in the house. So yeah, having your family support you is key in sort of career growth as well. So my first managerial role, and there's lots and lots of stuff you don't get trained for. So interviews, so undertaking an interview back in 2015 was the first time I actually sat in on an interview. Disciplinaries, you learn on your feet ultimately, because I wasn't privy to a lot of that stuff from being where I was in Lando. But again, offered lots and lots of good training by Northern. So ILM course and NEBOSH course. So as I went up as the production delivery manager, quite quickly within 6 months, the gent who appointed me, Dave Allen, he moved across to Leeds as depot manager over there, and I covered him. So luck, really. I mean, luck being in that place at the time. If my career had gone to Reading, where would I be now? And I often think about that. But I went up to Manchester, covered Dave as a depot manager. So I've literally gone from this young bloke, this young boy who'd been a team leader in Lando, looking after a team of 12 technicians, a handful of shunters who used to rotate around and be part of the shift, to running the niche depot up in Manchester, which is a bloody big depot looking after a lot of DMUs. So yeah, it's really sort of sink or swim, and I think Raj touched upon it. It's what you want, it's how you're made up, and it's the part of you in terms of how you get through it. So a couple of good years up in Manchester, going through a lot of good stuff in terms of depot upgrades, building a new shed, bringing in new trains, so the CAF 195s. And my career plan never really took me to West Midlands, but in 2019, I had a fleet role come up in West Midlands trains. And if that role had come up in other places, I probably wouldn't have gone for it. But I knew the engineering director, who I'd met a few times before, knew I wanted to work for him, so I applied for it, and I was fortunate enough to get it. So that's where I currently sit today in terms of, from 2019, head of fleet at West Midlands Trains. And a few years ago, if you'd asked me where would I have been, like I said, it would have probably been team leader or production manager in Lando Depot. I'd never in my wildest dreams realised what I ever dreamed. I would be a head of fleet at West Midlands Trains. So a couple of notes I've actually made is sort of, don't worry if you don't have the university experience. Life experience, how you lead, it does count. I'm living proof of that. So there's not many jobs within fleet that I haven't done. That gets you a lot of respect, actually. So my job is all about the people. I often have a joke that the head of fleet technical, Andy Bell, currently at West Midlands Trains, he's got a university experience. He worked hard in school. He does the technical bit. I didn't do so well in school. I do the people bit. That's not quite true, but you do need to be of a certain character to do the fleet production role. There's a lot of people management within it. But I think equally, if you don't have experience of them roles, tasks, go and get it, guys. Look for secondments, look for experience, do some voluntary experience. But yeah, I mean, I've cleaned trains, I've watched people marshalling trains for the operational side of the railway, and I've actually fixed trains. So yeah, I've got broad knowledge of that. And I think gathering broad knowledge, so visit places, LinkedIn's great. So networking's been touched upon quite a bit. But I think equally, we owe it to everybody to share best practice. There's a lot of people that hide behind what they do, but I think share it. There's a lot of stuff around sort of commercial, yeah, so as long as you're not breaking anything to do with commercial, share it. So from my experience, it was all about moving around, taking the good, leaving the bad, listening to people. So listening to advice that people are giving you, but listening to people in general as well. And it's all about investing time in people. So I carry out a monthly structured one-to-one with my report. And I think for me, it's just be there for your team. Your team's a reflection of you, and that's been mentioned quite a few times tonight. And you do get measured on your team's performance ultimately. And I think when I look back around the listening part, I often look back and I can think of times where someone was talking to me and I'd be on a computer typing away and I'd be going, that key phrase, I would say to someone, I am listening, where ultimately you're not. Get engaged. So don't be the person who sits quiet in a meeting, wishing you'd said something. I've been there a few times, so that's one of my failures. I think be engaged, give your point across. We all joke about there's no such thing as a stupid question unless you ask one of these. But yeah, put your hand up and get out what you want to say, because you've got one chance to say it. I think equally, if you're doing a good job, let people know you're doing a good job, and ultimately, your manager, your leader, will be letting people know you're doing a good job. Time management. So I used to scrape by last minute with things, particularly my coursework when I was going through my foundation degree. Planning time. Ultimately, that's what it's about, good time management. And something I've been doing a lot recently is reflect. So even if it's just 5 minutes at the end of your day, 5 minutes when you commute home, just reflect on things, make some notes, pick up any good points, but equally make note of any bad points and make sure you reflect and correct things. Let people make mistakes. So there's a boundary here in terms of obviously anything to do with safety or commercial. So don't put anyone to harm and don't blow your budget. But take that aside, it's how we learn. Don't get too comfy, stretch yourself. By all means, make mistakes. I've made a hell of a few along my career. And if you get knocked back on a roll, learn from it, don't dwell on it, move on. So whilst I said I was lucky enough to get offered 2 roles, so one up in Manchester and one with Reading, but knocked back twice before that. I could have just sat there, took it, gone into my shell and just thought I'll stay in Landor, this isn't for me. And you'll get their moments, guys, but ultimately you need to get straight back on it, get yourself infused again, correct where you went wrong, move on from it. And set out what you want. So I used to have a bit of a problem, sort of OCD wise, and my way, it was my way or the highway. I think a great example I can give of this is hot desking. So I'd come in on my shifts, basically, and I'd set out how I'd want it to be, and then when I come back in on the next shift, it'd be set out different because someone else had been. It actually took, I always thought my way is the right way, so it took me a long time to realise that the way the other person set things out was the right way for them. So I think a good bit of advice that I sort of got given before was set out exactly what you want. So as long as it meets an endpoint, accept it. So if you're going to give tasks out, if you want someone to do something, set out exactly what you want in that. And as long as it meets endpoints, accept it. It might not be exactly what you want or what you would have done, but just accept it. And again, similar to Raj, Ben gave us some questions. So how have I got into my role? I think there's a couple of keywords here, so passion, enthusiasm, challenging the norm, how I lead a team. I am a team leader. I think leader rather than manager crops up a lot more these days. On my disc profile, I'm an influencer, I'm conscientious. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's the networking part as well, and the sharing and get people to know who Gavin Thomas is. So not that Gavin Thomas is just this person in Landor Depot. Let everyone know who Gavin Thomas is through your networks. And I think push yourself wherever role you're going to be in, just be the best at it. So there's nothing wrong with being a technician, a 40-year technician, or there's nothing wrong with being a team leader. Just be the best at wherever you're going to be. Favorite part of my career, I'm going to say my current role, but I have loved every role I've been in. I think the chance to sort of go above, prove my dad proud in terms again to where I am now. Overseeing several depots, introducing brand new trains, knowing, I think the big part is sort of when you get to that sort of depot manager, at all levels really, but especially depot manager, head of fleet, sort of knowing that you've left a bit of a legacy and you've put a stamp on things that have ultimately improved that depot. I think it's great and there's no better feeling. I say, I think my personal opinion that the best role on the railway in traction and rolling stock for me is team leader. So your team leader is your day-to-day manager, your day-to-day leader. Them guys run the depots ultimately. And I think when I was a team leader, it was good because it was just enough influence to have when you're in work for the whatever shift length you're in there for. But when you go home, you can ultimately switch off. Obviously, as you progress into different roles, it does get a bit tougher. Your hours are longer. But I think sort of one of the best parts of my role is supporting apprentices. So really passionate about the apprenticeship program. They're the next leaders. So I'm really passionate about supporting apprentices. Some of them, I look back at my apprenticeship and while I probably wasn't the best apprentice, I always sort of say where I am now. So I can see that there's lots of talent in these guys, and in the railway at the moment, I mean, most companies I've worked for in the past have taken on 4 apprentices every year. So there's a really good conveyor belt of fresh young talent coming through. What would I have done more of? For further learning, but probably a bit sooner. I chased the money when I was young. Got really comfortable just chasing the money where I was. So I think my advice here is just say keep developing yourself. It hasn't got to be a course. It hasn't got to have a certificate at the end of it. It can be a secondment. It can be reading books. It can be finding a coach and a mentor. But yeah, it gets bloody harder when you get older. So the best advice I've ever received, there's a couple of things here. So when I went to leave, when I had the choice of leaving Great Western to go to Manchester or Reading, I didn't see the engineering director much. But we'd had conversations throughout my career. He gave me some good advice that sort of I can either stay in Great Western and be in the Great Western way of working, or I can ultimately go see the world as such, go up to Manchester and see new ways of working, work on different rolling stock. So that's the advice I took actually. And yeah, like I said, I mean, the career path forked at that point. I could have gone to Reading and who knows what I'd be doing now. Or obviously I followed the path to Manchester with Andy's advice, Andy Miller's advice, who was a bloody good ED. And this is where I am today. So yeah, really proud of that. When I was up in Northern, our engineering director, when I first started with Stuart Draper, he sat down with me when I covered the depot manager role on an interim basis and basically said, Gav, just go off, do your own thing, make your changes, ask for forgiveness, don't ask for permission, and pretty much give me the don't harm anyone and don't blow your budget talk. That was great. That was really refreshing to hear. Ultimately, I followed it. And that was good. And then my third best bit of advice was from the second engineering director, or the third engineering director, actually. Nick Donovan was the second. So Ben Aykroyd gave me some advice, pretty much around sort of career moves. And he said, there's 3 things when you're going for a role, and this sticks with me today. So he says, it needs to be good for your family, it needs to be good for you financially, and it needs to be good for your career. And very rarely will a role offer you all 3 of them, but if it offers you 2, take it. And I've followed that into my other roles. And then some other general sort of advice is recruit for attitude. The ability will come in a lot of people. I mean, attitude is key. Biggest failing, I think hiding behind the fact, for me, is hiding behind the fact that I sort of hid behind this. I'm a team leader from Landgo for too long. I believed in myself, but I was quite sort of shy in myself and probably played on this. I don't deserve to be here. I'm not as good as some of the other people. And I did have that. I recognise I had it, and you soon got to get over it. Mistakes, I'll make quite a few actually. I won't go into too many in detail. Perhaps if ever we meet up in a pub in the future, I'll fill you in on a few of these. I did drop a 150 in the dirt at one point with a hot axle box. But it's important to make them. Like I said, as long as obviously you don't bring anybody harm or impact on your budget, give people the freedom to make from them, but ultimately make sure you learn from them. Don't go making them all the time. Progression outside the organisation, the TA obviously, which I mentioned, great development as a leader, but pretty much like Raj as well, I think sort of reading books. I would never saw myself reading books, and this year I'm looking to progress my knowledge even further, but I think some great books out there. To name a few, if you want to make a note of some of these guys, and these are passed down from other people as well. So turn the ship around, will it make the boat go faster? Start with Why and the Chimp Paradox. Some great books in terms of getting to where you want to be as a leader and mind management. I think the last sort of key bit for me, have fun. Make sure you're having fun along the way. Kind of like the gambling slogan at the moment, when the fun stops, stop. I think sort of you'll know when you've come to that point in that role where it's probably time to move on. That's what I get. And you'll have a plan of what you want to deliver. And if you achieve 80% of that plan, then you've done really well. I think you always struggle to close with that last 20%, and ultimately that last 20% changes a lot as well. So yeah, I think the big thing for me is just have fun along the way, guys.
Thanks very much, Gav. That's fantastic advice as well. Similarly to Raj, you know, like the experience that you can gain from learning from reading books is fantastic, and every sort of step of your career that you can learn things from, like create a diary and you know, just keep track of it all. I've taken a bit of advice personally and started looking at the courses. I'm doing a diploma now myself in leadership and management, and it's learning that I've not done since school, so it's quite difficult to get the whole grey matter, get it back into gear. But you know, for me in my career path at the moment, it's definitely needed, and it just consolidates skills, and it gives you a different perspective on certainly the leadership side of things. Anyway, enough of me talking. I'm not one of the speakers today. So there's been some questions from some guys in the audience, some really good ones actually. One, Raj, about your France trip. Notoriously unionised across the transport sector. What were the hurdles you had to overcome, and how? And you touched on it a little bit with some strike prevention, but is there anything that you learned from that specifically?
I think the biggest thing really is building relationships at all levels. So my experience of France is very hierarchical. So there's very almost like there's very much a perspective of levels within France. So if you can learn to build relationships at all levels, so I found it easy to build relationships on the shop floor because that's where I came from the shop floor. If you can learn to talk to people in their language, so shop floor language is my language, speak, but then from going to the shop floor to then speak to the CEO, and almost trying to bridge that gap, be the problem solver, look how you can negotiate between those levels, look at things that are the key motivators for those individuals. What do those individuals want out of this situation, and how can you resolve that situation? But there's more to just it being a unionised environment in France. It's part of the culture as well across the whole of the country. So sometimes you've got to take a step back and understand that what's being talked about isn't personal, but try and understand why something's being talked about and why something's potentially going to happen, and try and resolve it as quickly as possible. Don't bury your head in the sand, because the people that come to work normally want to do a good job, regardless of what country you're in. So if there's something happening, sometimes just an ear is good enough to listen. Sometimes you listen and you come away with better ideas and more ideas. So that's just kind of like a brief overview. I hope that kind of answers the question.
Yeah, no, definitely, that's perfect. Thank you. And for both of you, you've mentioned that networking is important, something that some of you might have wanted to do more of in your early stages of the career. Have you got any pointers for effective networking and relationship building within our industry? And bearing in mind, one thing I've noticed with a YRP is that the rolling stock audience isn't as big, so a link between sort of infrastructure engineering and rolling stock, I think, is quite important. So if there's any advice that you can give on that.
Yeah, equally between engineering and operations within TOCs as well. So yeah, I think for me, reach out to people. So if I was given a message, I'll always reply. Like I said, about bringing on the future leaders is key. But yeah, I think I'll probably give a bit of an example of sort of reaching out to a network. So West Midlands Trains are currently recruiting for trainee train drivers. We've had about 6,500 applications, and one lad applied. Wasn't 100% convinced of his application, so did a bit of a video on LinkedIn and tagged in people like the ops director and such, basically sort of explain his application, and that stuff is just really good. I mean, it's totally out of the box thinking. I wouldn't have thought to do that, if I'm honest. But yeah, it's how you reach out and, like I said, get your name, get your face out there. But yeah, Raj is all over my LinkedIn, 25,000 views, and struggling to catch up with him.
Yeah, definitely.
and I'll speak on his behalf. I'm sure if you reached out to him, you know, he would help you, and I'm certainly the same. And there's a lot of people out there.
Yeah, definitely agree with those comments, Gavin. From my view, is like I said earlier, I never understood the point of networking. I wasn't interested in networking. For me, it's about working for my organisation. It wasn't about anything else. But if I was going to say to understand how to network and to watch one person, I know you've got a lady coming on in a few weeks, Lucy Pryor. She is the king and queen of networking. So if you need on networking, I would say join that event definitely, and make sure you ask that question, because if I was going to ask how to network properly, I would go and speak to Lucy straight away.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. You've both touched on the subject of learning. How do you balance that with your careers? Because your careers are quite intense, you know, there's a lot of responsibility that you've both got, but yet you still try and find time to invest in learning. How do you do it?
Do you want to go first, Ben?
Yeah, no problems. Well, probably to the detriment of my marriage, if I'm being completely honest. So, now, all joking aside, you've got I find it very difficult to study after work, because work is early mornings and long hours, and your mind is absolutely frazzled. So, to do it like that, you're not going to be at your best capacity. So, I'll be completely honest that I have to do it at weekends, and I'll do bits in the week, but in the week will be more reading. It won't be actually doing assignments or anything like that. So, you know, just a snippet, when I was in France, I was also studying an ILM level 5 and a business improvement diploma level 4 while being in France, which means, you know, it was spinning all sorts of places. And that's, you've just got to look at things. So Gav mentioned there about looking at 3 things. Is it good for the family? Is it good for your career? And is it good for the finances? That's the same with learning as well. Short-term pain, long-term gain, because you don't know everything. You never will know everything. You're always going to learn, but you need to find something you're passionate in. So some people wonder why I'm studying a master's in business and not, bearing in mind it's the first ever university degree I've done, and I'm not doing something in engineering. And that's because, as you know, Ben, I've got a passion for business. And if you can find a passion for your learning, it becomes a lot easier. It doesn't become a chore. So that would be my steer.
Yeah, and I think it boils back down to time management as well. Support of the family is key, but also support from work. I mean, if work are funding you through it, then I'm sure, obviously, if you speak to your line manager, he or she's going to give you time to actually do some of this in your work time as well. But I think the ultimate thing is it doesn't come for free. You've got to invest. So it might be funded, but you've got to invest that time. And it's difficult, guys, because like Raj said, if you work long hours, you don't particularly want to do it when you come home from work. You want to switch off, although your emails are going all night. So you get up early because you want to clear your emails before you get into work. So the only option really is annual leave and weekends. And ultimately on the weekends is when your husbands, wives, partners, girlfriends, boyfriends want to see you and want to do things. So it's tough, but yeah, it's what's at the end of that journey, what you get out of it, and that's what we need everyone to see.
Brill. I've got a question regarding military, and this is from the North East Chair, Oliver Craig, who's joint organiser of this series of events, and he said, is there any areas that you feel the ex-military outperform the civvies, and what can the civvies do to improve in those areas? Now, I think that's slightly controversial. Now, you know, ex-military bring different skills, in my opinion, rather than outperforming civvies, but you know, I get where he's coming from. What do you think?
Go first, Gavin, or do you want to go first on that one?
Go on. So I think from my experience, I mean, the TA is very much like working for a TOC, because it's heavily regulated. You're following process, you're following procedures. But I think from my experience, the training second to none. Absolutely second to none. The amount of money that the government ultimately throw at you through the service into your training and your development, and that's ranging from physical in terms of driving this or doing that or operating whatever bit of kit, the leadership from going on your SNC course, etc., second to none. And I think railway have got a lot to sort of learn to catch up with training, basically.
Mm.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that, and I think what people in the military have, and civilians have it as well, but there's a certain mindset when you've been on operations and you've been into war zones and you've been in locations where you have to make it work, as you guys know. There is no reserve, there is no second choice. You've got to just get it done and make it work as safe and as quickly as possible. And I think that doesn't mean you're better than anyone else. It just means your mindset has already been stretched because you've been put in those situations. And all you need to do is, if there's anyone that you ever come across that sometimes doesn't see things or doesn't understand that that's the way you can do things, it doesn't mean they're negative. It doesn't mean that they're a bad worker. All it means is they've not been put in a position yet to understand that that's achievable. That's all it is. So.
Very good, mate. Yeah, good advice from both. A question from both of you then. What do you think those in executive office positions can learn to engage better with the engineering side of the industry? So, you know, like the railway industry has obviously got various different sectors, various different tiers. Executive office based staff being like quite a high percentage of these people. How do you think they would benefit more from engaging with the engineering sides, both track based and rolling stock?
I think me personally, being very biased, is we are natural problem solvers. So from your apprenticeship, we solve problems on a daily basis. Now, not speaking out of turn, but everyone likes to think they're an expert in engineering outside of engineering. Everyone has an opinion of what should be happening and what shouldn't be happening. But I think anyone who's not worked in engineering before, they can definitely benefit from the problem solving mindset that engineers have, whether that's working on a wagon, a locomotive, a DMU, freight companies, train operating companies. If something comes in with a fault, that fault needs to be solved. So that's the mindset you brought up with.
Yeah, definitely. I think the methodical, how you work through things, how you solve a problem. If a light isn't working, you don't just go in and start changing a switch and rewiring it. You work through a methodical method. And I think obviously the engineering is just one part of the customer journey. Like I said, throughout what I've been seeing, you know, engineering and operations, I think we're working closer together now than we ever have. And we need to work closer together. And I think there's a lot to be said about obviously what Raj is doing in the freight world and what we're doing in customer world then, in terms of what we can learn from each other, because I think there's sort of barriers between us, but barriers don't really exist. They've been there in the past. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a lot to learn from each other within engineering as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Best practice is key, isn't it? Certainly. All right, guys. Thanks very much.
Yes. Good.
Go on, mate.
I said best practice and a few beers. Sounds good.
Definitely. Thank you very much to both of you. And you know, like the best practice to sharing, it's part of what YRP is about, getting people from these different sectors together. And you know, the young rail professionals, although it suggests you need to be young, you take a look at me and realise that you don't need to be, and you can be young within your career and still wanting to progress and learn more about the rail industry, and events like this will help us do it. Thanks very much to both of you. Next up then, over the next couple of weeks, as we mentioned before, we've got Lucy Pryor and Louise Shaw on the Monday the 13th, which Oliver North East Chair will be introducing, and then myself again with Jürgen Mayer and Finbar Dowling, both from Siemens. Jürgen, ex-Siemens Chief Exec, and Finbar is currently in charge of the new Goal project the deep tube contract that Siemens have just recently won. So if you're all interested in that, go onto the Young Rail Pro website and sign up for those. Thanks again to Raj and Gavin, and I hope you've all learnt loads from this event. Cheers, guys. Speak to you soon.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye.
Bye.